So can you do mob breeding and still produce registered sheep? Well, yes, you can. Mob breeding is when you breed many males to many females. This lowers the inbreeding coefficient and follows Fisher's principle in nature, where an equal number of males and females are created for breeding. Mob breeding follows the example of nature by letting the most dominant rams with the strongest sex drives breed more ewes than the passive males with lower sex drives, which encourages a stronger male reproductive ability in the genetic code. But when we use this mob breeding strategy, it is almost impossible to tell which ram bred which ewe, which can make building an accurate pedigree record nearly impossible. So while you can use registered sheep to do mob breeding, it would seem you can't produce registered sheep from mob breeding, as it would appear to be impossible to fill out an accurate pedigree record without controlling the breeding of which ram accesses which ewe. And all of this controlled breeding is just so you can record the correct ancestor on a pedigree chart. So while you can use registered sheep for mob breeding, can you ever really produce registered sheep by mob breeding? Well, yes, you can. Flock 54 genetic testing has a test that will tell you the parents of any sheep. You genetically test all of your registered breeding flock, and when you're ready to register your lambs, you send a tissue sample to Flock 54, and they can tell you the ewe and ram that produce the lamb, which gives you the information to correctly fill out the pedigree so the lamb can be registered. You apply a special ear tag to the sheep that bores out a small tissue sample into a receptacle, and the sample number for the receptacle is recorded, and the receptacle and sample are sent to the lab for genetic testing. The $22 Flock 54 genetic test will also tell you if the lamb is susceptible to various genetic diseases, as well as whether the animal has the gene for fecundity, which is called the Borrelia mutation for multiple births. And while Flock 54 currently does not tell you the breed, the technology is already here. For the St. Croix breeders have already published a blog that shows that you can determine the breed of a sheep from the genetic testing. Genetic testing is still in its infancy. At some point, the entire genetic code of an animal can be mapped, and all of the attributes can be measured and put into a genetic database for analysis. Now, this has a lot of potential. Now, if I had access to a genetic database that contained all of the data from my flock, I would review and analyze the data and identify the animals that met my breeding goals. This genetic data would tell me which animals I need to cull based upon their complete genetics, or their genotype, and not just their expressed genetics that I can observe, which is their phenotype. So it would tell me everything I need to know about this animal, regardless of what I see on the outside. Now, the data on this genetic database, it wouldn't need to be siloed on some server or on a PC kept at my house or some other sheep owner's house. The entire genetic information of every tested animal needs to be out on the internet in a searchable central database, which would help us to connect the dots on the genetic relationships between flocks. This shared genetic database would work a lot like the National Sheep Improvement Program, where quantified growth and size data about individual sheep in a sheep flock is shared with all the members. But the difference is, with this genetic data, it's going to be a lot better because it is permanent and it can't be manipulated by outside circumstances. Some of the ways that the National Sheep Improvement Program software can be manipulated is that it's not being used accurately, or they don't always report the correct totals, or they can bloat up an animal with so much grain that it comes out to the top of the list of how fast it grew, all because they want to sell stud fee services. In comparison, this genetic data in a searchable database cannot be falsified, it doesn't change, and the information will make the animal much more valuable because it would show its true genetic worth. Now, the National Sheep Improvement Program, as an impartial observer, could take this genetic data directly from the testing center and post it in an online searchable database, and that would help a lot of people. But a sheep registry could also do the same thing, like the St. Croix Sheep International or St. Croix Breeders Registries. My problem is I can't use a sheep registry. The problem I have is that when I bought my sheep back in 2009, they weren't registered. So there's no way for my unregistered sheep flock or anyone else's unregistered sheep flock to ever get into one of these sheep registries. Yet there is a tremendous amount of excellent genetic material in all of these unregistered sheep. I also think it's important to note that the original sheep that were brought to the United States from St. Croix Island, they were not registered or even in a registry. Many of these same sheep were raised at Utah State University, and they were created also from mob breeding, or what they called pasture breeding practices, where all the males and females mingled. And so these sheep also have no ancestor on their pedigree, yet they are now allowed into the registry. But today the registry is closed to sheep that are obviously purebred St. Croix, even with their purebred genetics being proven by genetic testing. This needs to change. A sheep registry could greatly benefit a lot of people by creating a subcategory of genetically registered St. Croix sheep. Maybe they will. The purpose of a sheep registry pedigree is meant to do two things: show that a sheep is actually purebred and show that it is not inbred because of its pedigree. Now, genetic testing can do both. Genetic testing can not only prove that a sheep is purebred to meet a breed standard, but it can also show the level of inbreeding in the animal. Genetic testing can do everything that these sheep registries are supposed to do, but do it better and produce information on genetic diseases too. If these sheep registries do not get on board with genetic testing, I think it wouldn't be good for them in the long run. So I'm placing my hope that one of the breeders' associations will start to incorporate genetic testing services inside their sheep registry. They have a lot of good people writing good articles on genetic testing, and these associations also provide links to various research papers. The future of sheep farming belongs not to what we did in the past, but to those people that are finding the best solutions today. When someone sits down to eat, they don't care if their meat was pedigreed or not. They want it to taste good, and they want their meat to be free of chemicals. A study at Utah State University showed that the St. Croix sheep tasted better and was more tender and juicier than other breeds, even the Dorper. St. Croix are also very parasite resistant, and they're one of the few breeds that can be raised entirely without chemicals. So St. Croix has what everybody wants. We just have to prove it to the public. Genetic testing will do that. The attributes of parasite resistance and superior taste, they're in the genetic code of the St. Croix, and they're available for future genetic testing to improve these areas. The future belongs to whoever creates the best sheep, not the best pedigree. So I see a lot of benefits in mob breeding. I'm going to continue to use mob breeding. At some point, I'm going to incorporate genetic testing in my flock to let me develop the very best sheep for breeding stock. And if I can never get a pedigree for my unregistered sheep from a sheep registry, then you can't ask me to be concerned about the future of sheep registries. If they don't help me or help the rest of us, we have to move on and still make the best sheep possible. But I think this idea of a centralized database that contains all of the information from a lot of different flocks, that works a lot like National Sheep Improvement Program but has genetic data, I think that's $1 million idea. Perhaps I need to find some investors and pitch this genetic database idea at the next Y Combinator meeting out in California and see if I can't get a lot of people to invest in it. In the meanwhile, be sure to check out our certified chemical-free website. It's growing every day, and it has a lot of potential. It's another really good idea. Well, thanks for listening to the video.